Well, let's take you down memory lane now as we look at the life of Mr. Kofi Annan. Here is a first part of our special feature on the man whose life many have said was well lived. It was filed by documentaries editor Fifi Kumsin.
The world that I'm working to create is a world that should be of interest to all of us. I'm working to create a world that is stable, that is peaceful, where we as human beings realize that we cannot consume the resources of the world the way we are doing, as if there's no tomorrow.
That's the man, Kofi Annan, declaring his vision for the world, a vision to protect the dignity of humanity.
The farmer knows instinctively that if you take something from the earth today, you have to put something back to be able to return to harvest tomorrow. Somehow, when we move to the city, we lose that instinct. We need to create a world that is equitable, that is stable, and a world where we bear in mind the needs of others and not only what we need immediately.
But this vision about the world seems to have started a long time ago here in Ghana, West Africa. Kofi Annan was born on April 8, 1939 in Kumasi, Ghana, to an elite family. His father, Henry Reginald Anashanti, and his mother, Victoria Annan Efante. Kofi Annan attended Asim Boys Junior Secondary School and later, in 1953, the Infantipim Senior Secondary School, Cape Coast, where his future as a diplomat would be crafted. In this documentary, we speak to schoolmates, friends, co-workers, and family members looking back on the life of the man who, until his death, wowed the world with his exemplary leadership style. Kofi Annan Secondary School in Infantipim was founded by British Methodist missionaries in 1876. And here is where many of the stories about Mr. Annan's political leadership, fun and pun, started.
At school, there was nothing to distinguish Kofi from any other child in the school.
Dr. Andrew Anane Akutu, a retired civil servant at the UN, was Mr. Annan's schoolmate at Infantipim. He remembers so vividly their time on campus back in the day.
Kofi's main thing, as I recall, is that he was a very good athlete. That he was a very good sprinter. And later on, and then when he went to the States and so on, he was even competing in the States as a sprinter.
While on campus, Kofi Annan was deeply involved in the political leadership, becoming the opposition leader of the mock parliamentary elections of Infantipim. That earned him the nickname Domo.
From mock political parties and elected members to assemblies and so on. And Kofi was elected the deputy leader of the opposition. And in those days, opposition people were called generally Domo. So Kofi acquired the nickname Domo up till his passing. Among some close friends, we called him Domo.
And this was at a time the Gold Coast was working to seek independence from Britain, a time of increased optimism about Ghana's political future led by Ghanaians. Under the leadership of Kwame Nkrumah, a movement for independence was gaining ground, and by 1957, Ghana had become the first British African colony to gain independence.
You may remember that during those middle 50s, most children at secondary schools and everywhere, we were all highly aware of the political activities and movements that were taking place in and around us at the national, regional level. And so growing up in Kumasi, he could not possibly have missed would not have been unaware of the political movements there between the Kwame Nkrumah's movement and the Ashanti, this thing for separation, regional, and so on.
But this active involvement in politics on campus would not translate into dabbling in politics at the national level. This is why the legendary former headmaster of Infantipim, F.L. Bartels, would not allow his students to join the political movement. He's a man who would influence a generation. F.L. Bartels instilled in his students greater discipline. Ambassador Patrick Hayford was Director for Regional and African Affairs in the Executive Office of the UN Secretary General. As an old boy of Infantipim himself, Ambassador Hayford believes the influence of F.L. Bartels helped shape the character of Kofi Annan.
And he was a wonderful educationist who helped to instill these values of discipline and honesty and integrity, but above all, public service. He helped to instill this in his students, including in Mr. Kofi Annan. And Mr. Annan often spoke of the influence of Mr. F.L. Bartels.
One of Kofi Annan's noticeable achievements at Infantipim was to lead a protest against poor quality of food in the dining hall.
He happened to be the leader of a small group of students who were protesting perhaps more loudly than others. And this came to the notice of the headmaster, Bartels.
F.L. Bartels then called him to his office and said, "I understand you had something to do with all this strike nonsense. If you have an issue to discuss, come to me and we'll discuss it man to man. You are reasonably intelligent. Given the chance, you may become a useful member of society." That was the prophecy. Kofi would then work towards translating this into reality. He left Infantipim after F.L. Bartels failed to promote him to sixth form because Mr. Annan's performance was not stellar. Kofi later entered the new Kumasi Institute of Science and Technology, a British-operated technical college. Here too, his instinctive sense of leadership would make him the president of the Ghana National Students' Union. During a visit to Sierra Leone, he was spotted by executives of the Ford Foundation on a talent scout. In 1959, Kofi Annan studied at the McAllister College, a small liberal arts college in St. Paul, Minnesota. At McAllister, Mr. Annan was easily noticeable. He was a good debater and delivered various speeches about the need for the West to support Africa, a continent trying to pull itself out of the woods. After McAllister, Kofi Annan joined the United Nations in 1962 and would make his way upward through the system. His specialties included people management, a skill his friend and former director for Africa and regional affairs in the Executive Office of the UN Secretary General, Ambassador Hayford, says Mr. Annan demonstrated strongly while in Infantipim.
Infantipim has a long and proud tradition of public service. We were all taught and encouraged to go into public service because it was a duty. And I think it came out of the Christian Methodist ethos, that we are here not for ourselves, but to serve others and the Almighty.
That's the first part of our documentary celebrating the life of Kofi Annan. Tomorrow we'll bring you the fuller version of that documentary filed by documentary's editor, Fifi Kumsin. Now his death has been described as a great loss to the world. More tributes continue to pour in for Mr. Kofi Annan. We can hear from James Victor Beho, a Ghanaian lawyer and diplomat, and then we can hear from Hudu Yahya.
I got to know Kofi Annan much better later on when I served at the UN, first in the early 60s, and then after a decade as ambassador of Ghana to the United Nations. Kofi Annan was in the Secretariat of the UN there, and there was so a lot of interaction between us. What is more, soon after I went as ambassador, Kofi Annan became the head of the peacekeeping department of the United Nations. And as you know, Ghana has always been interested and active on peacekeeping around the globe, which meant that we had to consult with the UN quite often. And it was a joy to meet and discuss with Kofi.
You must have stayed close throughout.
Yes, yes. We have been friends, but more than that, we were colleagues. And I was attracted very much to him because of his professionalism. He was a diplomat of diplomats. He was gifted, you know, with dealing with other human beings. And also it was a joy to learn from him at every meeting that we had together.
He was so soft-spoken. Is that how he was in private life as well, or was it a tool he employed for his job?
No. I think that he is a calm person. He is very circumspect, and he always thinks carefully about what to say before he says it. And that way, he is respected by many. And also because he worked in the Secretariat. Now, in diplomacy, you have diplomats like I was, you know, speaking out loud and so on. But then you had on the other side the United Nations, which is an international civil service, and those who are there are the servants of the international community, so to speak. And they are usually soft-spoken. They serve and are happy to help others with problems or to execute decisions made by politicians and so on. And this is how Kofi came out to everybody, and he was liked by many.
And then through politics, that is, Mr. Kofi Annan ascended to the position of Secretary General of the United Nations during the time when NDC was in government, and during the time when President Rawlings was the President of the Republic of Ghana. And the role that President Rawlings, as President of Ghana and as head of government and leader of the NDC, he led NDC to play in terms of promoting Mr. Kofi Annan. Amongst other contestants, he elected the Secretary General of the United Nations. That was how I got to know Mr. Kofi Annan. Mr. Kofi Annan has been a career diplomat, but who was born and bred in Ghana, attended Mfasipum Senior School, and has put that school on the map of the world, because that has produced him. He conducted himself very well, and that made Ghana, that put Ghana further on the map of Ghana. He was the first black African south of the Sahara to ascend to that position. And of course, that has become the pride of children growing up to look at him as an example to follow. That we can also ascend to that enviable position of Secretary General of the United Nations. Mr. Kofi Annan exhibited his role as Secretary General to the envy of all. He did not disgrace Ghana, he did not disgrace Africa.
people who may have had doubts about the performance of an African in that position, definitely he cleared those doubts. That at no time should an African, a black African, and for that matter, be doubted in the performance of any international assignments. You can see that after his term, he served the 2 terms to the fullest. After that, he has been assigned a lot of international difficult duties, including the case of the Rohingya, Muslims from Myanmar. He was one of the distinguished people put, forward to help resolve the problem. In the case of the Syrian conflict, initially, he was one of those invited.
Hudu Yaya there speaking about his fond memories of Kofi Annan. So watching The Pulse with me, Gifty Andor.